Good morning. So our theme this month is harvesting our abundance. And last week I was talking about how we are abundance, that it's not something we get from the external world, which we're not trying to do certain things to get more abundance to come to us, that it's our inherent nature because it's God's inherent nature. God is infinite and eternal. There is no end to God. There is no limit to this infinite and eternal love intelligence of the universe. And since we are made in the image and likeness of this divine presence, we are this divine presence at our highest and most absolute level, that this is who we are. We are abundance. So it's just like kindness. We don't get kindness. We don't try to get people to be kind to us. We are kind, and we can choose to express from that inherent kindness. It's a choice that we get to see within ourselves and practice. So the same thing is with abundance. We are abundant nature. We continue to recognize it, and then we practice it by sharing it out into the world, just as we would with kindness. The way we share abundance in the world is what we call the law of circulation. I'm sure most of you have heard of this law of circulation. We see it in everything, in how our body works, our circulatory system. We see it in the seasons, the circulation of the seasons. So there's the death, rebirth, summer, fruition, fall. We go through these cycles. That everything, there's a cycle. And so we have this idea that we have learned, as you sow, so shall you reap. As you plant the seeds, they'll grow. So this is how we practice the law of abundance. And that's really what a lot of our Judeo-Christian, Muslim, Western religion is based on. We have this idea, and I think sometimes we take it for granted. So we are a country that has learned to give to charities. We are a country that has learned to support our spiritual sources, nonprofit organizations, our spiritual communities. And I never really thought much about it until I was on an airplane one time, and I was sitting next to a Korean gentleman who was a Christian minister, and he had come to the United States, got his degree in Christianity in seminary, and then went back to bring it. He was Korean, and to bring Christianity to Korea. And he said, it's interesting, Americans don't even realize how generous they are. He said, giving is just part of, you have that belief system inherent in your culture. He said that belief system is not inherent in the Korean belief system. That is very much take what you can get and then keep it. That there's no idea of charity. There's no idea of giving to nonprofit organizations who need money. This idea of sharing our generous resources. And he said, when you're in America and people say they need money, people are very generous. And he said, I'm not surprised that this has been such a prosperous nation because there's this wonderful idea of giving. And it's interesting, I think, that we've had this bigger idea of the gap between the rich and the poor lately. And we had that whole Occupy movement, and there's only 1% that has all this money. And I wonder, I'm not saying this is true, I'm just wondering, it's just something I'm speculating, is there some connection that as we become less of a religious nation, as we're beginning to teach less of these spiritual principles, that our country is forgetting the power of being generous? That our kids aren't being taught from young, it's not becoming an inherent idea that to give is to receive, that there's this divine circulation. So it's not just about me getting rich, because if we look at prosperity, it's not just about one person or one nation or one culture. If we are striving to become heaven on earth, that's for everyone to strive in abundance. So you may be familiar with the story, forgive me if you are, but it's just a wonderful metaphorical story, which is when a woman is shown hell, what she sees is a bunch of people at a feast. There's this huge feast on the table, and they're starving. Their sinks are sunken in, and they're suffering, because the only way they're given to eat this food is a huge fork with a really long handle that's bigger than their arm span, so they can't get it into their mouth. So they have all this food before them, but they can't eat it. And then she's shown heaven. In heaven, they have the same feast, but everyone is happy and joyful and filled to overflowing, because what they've done, they feed each other. They give. That's the generous spirit. We all thrive. Our souls thrive when we share and we give. So this idea of giving and receiving, you may have heard it your whole life, but just be grateful that you have. because what a gift it is, not just to your own life, but to everyone around you, that you have been developing in the spiritual generosity, this generosity of spirit, that when people need, we have this desire to give. We don't even think that we fight sometimes we don't want to give, but we feel like we should, and then we think, well, what's this should? But there's a nice energy that comes from this sense of, I should be helping my brothers and sisters. There is a nice that we've had that sort of idea put in our head that it's not just about me. I'm sure many of you have heard have heard and seen the movie The Secret, or read the book The Secret, which is all about the law of attraction, which is about creating and getting the things that we want. And many of you may have heard the criticism of The Secret, which is completely self-centered and narcissistic. It's all about what I want, creating what I need, and it's become a law that's become very egocentric. And actually, in the past, spirituality has been the opposite. It's about not being about our ego. So what a lot of the spiritual but not religious movement was saying, well, we're allowed to be happy. We don't need to suffer. So we don't want to give everything away to somebody else and not have enough for ourselves. So the pendulum, as it does, swings, and we get so focused on feeding ourselves that we forget about the other. Because that does become hell. That metaphorical story is actually real, that we can start focusing all the time on this law of attraction of getting what we want, and our soul is withering away. It's shrinking, because that's not where the joy comes from. Whenever you've had good in your life, what's the first thing you want to do? Share it, whether it's an emotion, whether it's a feeling, whether it's some good that's happened in the world, some justice that's happened, whether it's some material good. The first thing you want to do, the joy is expanded and multiplied to overflowing when we share it with somebody else. That's when we're in heaven consciousness. We are in joy when we are generous. So think about your last week. I invited you last week to notice when you were feeling abundant. So this past week, did you do that? Did you practice feeling you're always already abundance, that it's not something you're getting out there, that it's who you are? And then when you're in that place of abundance, sharing from that place, giving from that place, giving from that divine overflow. And did you feel a little bit happier, your energy expand a little bit more when you got to share it with somebody else? That's what living this law of generosity is. The law of generosity is heaven. Now, it's funny. I have to get rid of some of my own walls, and it's already gone. Up until now, it's gone. Because it was funny, in the spring, I was thinking, gosh, I really want to do talks about generosity and Thanksgiving, but those are November talks. That's the month of Thanksgiving, and I can't do it in March. But this is really the cornerstone of the spiritual life. It's not just for November. That when we start really feeling our abundant nature and that generosity, that's where this incredible joy comes forth. We start feeling the beauty and joy of giving. And so I have my favorite example, which is Judy. Judy is a woman I met outside. She was sitting outside Jamba Juice one morning, and she's homeless. And on her table, when I drove up, was a little sign that said, "Have happy thoughts." And I just started talking with her. She's like, I just want everyone to have happy thoughts and feel good. Everyone should feel good because they're so beautiful. And I never carry cash. So I went to Lucky's, and I thought, well, I'll get her some cash and bring her back something. I come back to her table. It's been like 15 minutes. 3 bowls of oatmeal in front of her. She goes, oh, yeah, the manager came out and he gave me all this food, and then other people came and gave me oatmeal. I mean, she can't keep the stuff coming from her. All this stuff always happens. People give me all this clothes. I don't know what to do with all these clothes, so I take it to the homeless shelter for other people. That she wasn't giving joy because she wanted anything returned. She was giving it because she genuinely wanted people to be happy. She was giving so much joy just by have happy thoughts, not because she wanted people to genuinely have happy thoughts. She was wanting to give from herself, and from that, she just kept getting all this stuff. There was another time where I got unexpected income, and I had this $20 bill. I see her, and I say, hey, I'd like to give this to you, Judy. She goes, oh, no, someone else just gave me a $20 bill. I don't need any more. I mean, she didn't know what to do with the stuff that just kept coming at her, this bounty, because all she kept doing was giving, and giving from pure joy. And the greatest lesson from Judy She is homeless. She has no teeth. She is an alcoholic and chooses to be an alcoholic. She had a very painful life that causes her pain, and so she likes to be an alcoholic to numb the pain. She's clear about that. So she has everything we don't want to be. We want to have beauty and health and harmony and good relationships and all this stuff. She doesn't have any of that stuff, and look how much she has to give. Because she feels that loving connection within her. There is no condition, circumstance, or person in our relationship that is an excuse for us to not be able to share this good, because this good has already been given to us. And she knew that at the core of her beingness, and everybody responded to it. You just can't be in her presence without feeling that genuine, pure love that she was connected with. And when she needed something, she did ask for it. She wasn't afraid to ask for a good either. She wanted to talk to her mom on her mom's birthday, so someone bought her a temporary cell phone so she could call her mom, and that need was met, and she was done with the phone. So she was able to get the need, that when she needed a little food, she had a little food. So she got her needs met, but her place from coming was from the overflow. That's what that is, this law of generosity. It's just opening up to this infinite good of the universe. So one of the challenges, one of the things we miss is when we say, as you sow, so shall you reap. What starts to happen is we start to think, okay, if I give, I might get back. And so then we start to give with an agenda. And we're going to give, but we're hoping that now the universe is going to return what I've just given, and I start looking out there for my good. We have it backwards. Actually, we already have everything. The giving is the end of the cycle. It is the completion of the cycle. The beginning of the cycle is ourself. The God within us, the abundant nature that we always already are. We have everything, but what happens is we're not generous with ourselves. That's why we get depleted, that's why we get tired, that's why we get exhausted, is because we like to be generous, we feel the joy of generosity, but we're not being generous first and foremost with our own self. So spiritual practices, the old way of speaking about spiritual practices is as a discipline. You have to do it to become enlightened. It's another task that we need to do during the day to get what we want. But if we look at spiritual practices as the most generous gift that we can give to ourselves, that time that we spend in meditation, whether it's 5 minutes or an hour, that time we spend praying and journaling, that time we spend nurturing our communion with Spirit is the most generous gift we can give to ourselves, and we will get depleted giving externally if we are not giving to ourselves first and foremost. So our spiritual practices are the most generous way we can be compassionate and loving with ourselves. We have already been given, but we got to take the time to receive, and that's what spiritual practices really are. That's our time to receive, to feel our connection with the infinite wellspring of all life. And when we do that on a regular and consistent basis, that's the purpose of consistency, not because you should do it because we have it like school, because when we start doing it on a regular and consistent basis, we'll start feeling that connection no matter what's going on in our life, no matter what the situation and circumstances. So we may be having a lot of struggles in our life, a lot of issues. I sit, I connect, and I may not feel the connection, but I sit anyways. I do that sitting. I have a great day. Things are wonderful. It doesn't matter. I sit. And there becomes this thing that no matter what's happening, the highs or the lows, I sit. I sit my ground. I sit in that oneness. I may not even feel it, but I sit anyways. Every day I sit anyways, and something starts to happen. We start to feel a presence that we can't articulate with words. That's why so many spiritual masters say, just do it first, and then we'll talk about it, because you don't know what you're talking about until you actually experience it. It's something you can't explain, but when we start nurturing that every single day with consistency, we start realizing this universe is infinitely generous. When we come and sit every day, that becomes an actual reality, not just something we conceive in our head, not just a theology, not just a philosophy, but a living reality that starts to become palpable in our everyday life. So first, we want to be generous with ourselves. Be generous with your spiritual practices. People say, I don't have time. Be generous with yourself. Anita Morjani, who had a near-death experience, my favorite thing that I heard her say was when someone asked her, she was doing a talk, and then afterwards there's question and answer, and someone said, well, what's changed the most for you since you've had your near-death experience? And she said, well, before I had my near-death experience, I really learned that it was good to give, as I was talking about earlier. She had that belief system. So I gave a lot, but I also got depleted a lot. I was tired a lot. Since the near-death experience, I now give to myself first and foremost, and I know that's not selfish. It's the greatest gift I can give to everybody else, is to give to myself. So self-love is how she changed the most after a near-death experience. Not out there, but in here. So she said, I take an ample time every day, not just a little bit, not just squeaking just a few minutes for ourselves, but ample, abundant time for our life and our communion with Spirit. That's abundance. That's nurturing ourselves. That's having infinite compassion and generosity to ourselves. We are giving to ourselves. And from that place, we move out into a day, and our whole day will be different because we've given to ourselves abundantly. And the depletion rate doesn't start happening because we no longer realize that it's not my finite self that is giving, but it's the infinite pouring through me. So suddenly we are shifting from I'm doing it all myself and I get tired to this infinite energy moving through me. Reverend Michael Beckwith has been my greatest example for that. I don't know how many years ago, but he's been around 20-something years, over 20 years, 25 years. He has given 2 sermons every week. He has his Sunday sermons and his Wednesday sermons. They're 2 different themes every week. He almost never has, he has guest speakers, but not very often. Some ministers take sabbaticals. He's never taken a sabbatical. He can go travel, and he always makes sure he's back on Sunday for services. He's so committed to those Sunday services. I've never known, he doesn't even take vacations. If he goes on vacation, he takes a group of people and they do spiritual work on their vacation. He doesn't, his day off is spiritual work. He has a 5-hour-a-day spiritual practice, though. He doesn't have a 5-minute-a-day practice, and then he's doing. 5 hours a day, he's spending nurturing that, but that's kept him going for years and years. I've never, other than sometimes he gets physically tired, but I've never seen him depleted, and he always says, because it's the infinite working through me. It's not, the infinite never gets tired. The infinite is never exhausted. It's infinite vitality, and that's just a concept until we start spending time with that energy and that infinite vitality within us. We nurture that. And suddenly we have this explosive energy that has no end, and joy and love and peace and creativity and harmony and all those wonderful and beautiful things, no matter the conditions, whether we're Judy and we're homeless or whether we're Bill Gates, who's a wonderful, Warren Buffett, who are philanthropists. Wherever we are on the scale, it doesn't matter because Spirit is equally in, through, and as all beings, regardless of situation, circumstance, or condition, we all have that ability to be generous from this moment forward with ourselves and the time we spend with God and with the world. That's the life of generosity, and that's the law of generosity, and that's the law of heaven, the beauty and grace of heaven. So I invite you this week to continue to recognize and to be generous with yourself. Find that your abundant nature. Find and feel the God presence within you. Be generous with yourself. Be generous with yourself. Spiritual practices are your way of being generous with yourself. And then go out and see if you can bless, like Judy, every person who you come in contact with. See how you can give and see if that feeling just doesn't expand and multiply and overflow as you're generous with a smile. All she was asking people to do was have happy thoughts. She wasn't giving anything. She was just giving love, giving joy. It doesn't take a lot.